Nisorantan indabeham Isandana hono Indavanayam denvahi Isandana shandono Nicht torendam himdai never Ich torendam dach vandeana in der Wendheit dann Hand durch hindurch bei dann in der Wende dann da ist nicht den Mann in Shandana in Dachweitene hinter Tornam nach nicht ständig wenn ich an euch hör in der in der Nacht schon doch in der Welt in Tornam Tag weil hast nicht wenn du kann Tondan in der Nacht Tondan in der Welt Tondan in der Nacht Tam nach Wanaya in der Nacht in der Welt du kannst Tam nach Wanaya schon doch nun der Henne ist am Dach in wir nennen da in der Benecht an Dach in der Shano in der Ich soll am Dach bin schon doch in der Herren deiten danach sucht dann das nach sit nicht beesche I was ach dach na asanant as die wird nicht schon As anach sucht dach sit nicht schich nach was sucht dach nach ahidne esche Satnam, thank you so much for joining. My name is Jean. I am a channel for creator consciousness, and I'm here to assist humanity in ultimately reawakening and remembering and reconnecting to its divine core authentic expression, which I believe to be the Christ within your child, which is the mergence between the masculine and the feminine, the mergence of duality. So just once again, thank you for joining, thank you for being here, thank you for receiving. Today's session, activation, blessing is intended to assist us in overcoming confusion. That is what I heard, like just as I was, just before I finished. God was like, this is to assist with clarity, confusion, etc. I speak a lot about clarity as well, because obviously nobody wants to be confused, right? Everybody wants to live in a state of knowingness and ease, right? Not to struggle. Confusion is a cuck energy. um, yeah, that is what I'm going to be sharing today. That is what I want to talk about a little bit today. It is so often, you know, that we, how can I put this? We expect things to be a certain way. We expect things to work out in a certain way. We expect, for instance, when we enter into the 5D, when we enter into this new world where we have entered, we expect things to be light and heavenly and just, how can I say this? Just good, just light. But that's not at all the case, because as I have mentioned in a previous video, just because we are in the fifth dimension, that doesn't mean that duality ceases to exist. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden, like the laws of nature and the laws of creation are all of a sudden different. Even though we are rewriting the laws, there are some principal things that will always be, because once again, duality is creation. Creation is duality. It's the friction between the two that kind of creates momentum and creates the spark. It creates the movement, right? So when we enter into the fifth dimension and we hear that we're now living in the new world or whatever, we expect everything to be perfect. But see, that's not what the fifth dimension is. I'm mainly talking about the fifth dimension because that is what a lot of people talk about in the spiritual communities. That's what a lot of people think New Earth is. The fourth dimension, like scientifically speaking, is time, right? And so when we are in the fourth dimension, we can traverse space and time consciously, right? So it doesn't matter, distance doesn't matter, and time doesn't matter. So what is the fifth dimension then? The fifth dimension and the higher dimensions is a consciousness perspective. If you have ever experienced yourself in a liminal space where you feel like all of a sudden you step through a portal, or like for some of you who have been following me for a while know that I've spoken about meeting gods, stepping into this weird liminal space and actually meeting gods in flesh, and all these weird things happening, and then all of a sudden I'm out of that. That is the fifth dimension. That is the higher dimensions. See, when we start ascending and we reach a certain level past the fourth dimension, it is simply our consciousness that starts experiencing things differently. The fifth dimension is the first dimension wherein duality becomes one. That doesn't mean duality does not exist. It simply means that your perspective on duality is complete. It's a oneness perspective. It's not a versus perspective. Yes, the fifth dimension and higher is all about like being very liminal. It's about like magical things happening. It's about like supernatural, what we would perceive as supernatural things happening, experiencing other realities, etc., etc. Sure. But mainly it's a perspective thing. Mainly it's a consciousness thing. Once again, the fifth dimension is the first layer of reality in which we get to experience the oneness of everything. So if you have experienced the oneness of the all, you have experienced the fifth dimension. And once you've experienced that, there's no taking it away. Okay, there's no you can always very easily revert back to that consciousness simply by holding that intention. So what does this have to do with confusion? What does this have to do, again, when we expect the journey, we expect the higher realms to be all love and light. But that is exactly the same as the love and light crew of in the spiritual community that is like spiritually bypassing, that is not truly doing the inner work, etc. Right? It's completely ignoring 50% of all of creation. Right? If you ignore the darkness, you're ignoring 50% of creation, which is a whole fucking lot. So we tend to get confused. We tend to get we become disappointed. We become hopeless. We become this, because we experience these beautiful things, and then all of a sudden we experience something within our life that is not fifth dimensional, that is not of high vibration, but it is. That is what the fifth dimension is. Your perspective. All of a sudden, you start seeing that the bad things happening is part of the good. I've spoken about this before, I know, but it's so necessary for us to know. We aren't moving into a world where everything is perfect. That does not exist. Perfection does not exist. Like on a side note, when I was a teenager, I read The Grand Design by Stephen Hawking and somebody else. And he actually stated in the book that like perfection doesn't exist, because if perfection existed, then galaxies wouldn't have formed. Stars wouldn't have formed, galaxies wouldn't have formed, planets wouldn't have formed, solar systems wouldn't have formed, because everything would be like perfect. Everything would be at exactly the same distance from each other, etc., etc., etc. That is basically what I want to share. I want to share with you to embrace the confusion. Embrace the confusion that is bringing the understanding that the darkness is one and the same part of the light. It is the light, and the light is the darkness. This might sound counterintuitive and even a little bit like end-timey, like the good is bad and the bad is good. That's not at all what I'm saying. Like bad is bad, obviously, from our perspective and from a perspective of what makes us feel good and bad, etc. But what I am saying is that if you want to truly live in the new, if you want to experience the new world, then you have to accept the fact that duality is part of creation. You have to accept the fact that the confusion that you're feeling is the thing that is guiding you towards your clarity. Because your confusion, which is the opposite of clarity, is the clarity. The confusion is the clarity, and the clarity is the confusion. It's the exact same thing. It's just a matter of perspective. And once you reach the fifth dimension consciously, and sometimes, we jump in and out of that, which is fine, obviously. But when you reach that, you gain this knowledge, you gain this understanding, and then you become a master of duality. You become a master of your confusion. I don't know why confusion is coming up so strongly. I think it's probably just because perhaps a lot of people are struggling with confusion. Perhaps a lot of people connecting here are struggling with the whole fact of like things are going great and wonderful, and all of a sudden something shitty happens. I mentioned in a previous video as well, like when we purge, when we release, certain things happen, things break, things blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean that we're now in a lower vibration. Even the experience itself is in a lower vibration. Like, the shittiest experience can be a fifth dimensional experience. It simply depends on how it is perceived within your wholeness perspective, right? My videos are becoming longer, but I just want to give a quick example. I've mentioned that I've met like the god Odin before, a couple of times actually. Now Odin is a very dark being. Odin is a god of death. He's a god of like thieves. He's a god of war and like ecstasy, like craziness almost, right? And every time I've shifted into that realm, obviously he doesn't exist in the 3D, but he does. When I went into the fifth dimension consciously and I was experiencing him in the flesh, like not like just spiritually, but physically, it was always a very dark experience, but that dark experience was a very liberating and freeing experience. I'm told to leave it just there. I hope I'm making sense. I hope that this was clear enough for you. Perhaps I'm talking about confusion because my energy is a little bit confused. It doesn't matter though, I'm just sharing what I'm sharing. So yeah, I'm just gonna do a little bit of integration. Na asur taktanach sivet nechshen het noch dan ivasanachta. Thank you so much for joining. So don't be too hard on yourself if you feel like you're not in the fifth dimension. You probably are. Unless your perspective isn't there. Like if you feel like you're not in the fifth dimension, actually you're probably not. But the reason you're not in the fifth dimension is because you're perceiving this dark experiences as not being part of the fifth dimension. Because once again, we tend to think that all of a sudden everything is heaven on earth. We are creating heaven on earth 100%. But that heaven on earth, again, it's a perspective. It's seeing that death is not something bad. It's seeing the pain is not something bad. It's seeing that a bad experience is ultimately a good experience because it is guiding us towards a bigger and greater. Holding that knowledge, holding that knowing, and having that knowing within you, that is a fifth dimensional frequency. That is what unconditional love is. And the higher we go, the more liminal things become and the more whole things become, the more we start seeing that truly, truly, truly death is life and life is death. So yes, Satnam, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for connecting with me. I love you so much. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Please remember to contact me for your personal session if you feel called to. And also please remember to, my email's in the description box down below. And also please donate to my channel if you feel that the medicine resonates. My PayPal's in the description box down below as well. Yes, I'm sending you so much love and joy and flow and ease and clarity through your confusion. Clarity to know that your journey is exactly how it is supposed to be. It's not necessarily how you think it should be. The fifth dimension, your ascension, is not what you think it is, but it is what it is. And it is a part of duality, as duality is a part of it. Okay, Satnam, I love you so much. So many blessings, and I am out. Bye.